Sean Mize here with part B of our testing and tracking traffic sources. So I've already gone through this kind of discussing articles. They have been profitable for me. They continue to be profitable for me. And the biggest reason you don't see more articles lately is because of all the time and effort, money and energy that I'm putting into developing diverse sources of traffic. However, those articles that are in there continue to drive subscribers, they continue to drive revenue, and in fact, they are, if we looked at my total revenue, we could probably see that 30 to 40% of my total revenue today comes from people who have come in through the articles. Now, earlier in the other traffic training in part A, I indicated that in any traffic source, whether you're using social media, you're using Facebook, you're using pay-per-click, you're using articles, SEO, content marketing, whatever, that generally to become good at it, you've got to go all in. And for me, it was 6-8 hours a day for 10 months. People that do pay-per-click, all in, may mean $5,000 or $10,000 a month for 10 months. If you're doing social media, probably means learning exactly what to do. Get away from spending your time social media chit-chatting and instead working. And imagine working 6 to 8 hours a day for 10 months, learning how and optimizing Facebook or other social media sources. You'd probably get pretty good at it. The problem is that most of the time when people get into a traffic source, they spend 20 minutes a day, and if after 2 weeks of 20 minutes a day they don't have results, they decide that traffic source doesn't work for them. And unfortunately, that's what I see in article marketing. People get excited about writing articles, they see my results, and they go out and they write 7 articles over the course of a week or two, and they get 3 subscribers. And they throw in the towel. And I don't blame them. I mean, it's not easy. The truth of the matter is, any traffic source that you put 20 minutes into a few times probably isn't going to yield you any results. Okay, now, having said that, what I have discovered in all traffic sources is that that's what normally happens. What I've discovered with article marketing is that because people see my high level of results, and then they compare that to what the average work that somebody does is, they realize that there's an incredible gap, and they become discouraged. And so for that purpose, because I find that so many people get discouraged because they don't put the work in, just be honest with you, I've kind of stopped pushing that as an article source for people, as a traffic source for people. But now that you're hearing me, if you're thinking, wow, could that be a traffic source for me today? If you're willing to put the time and energy and effort that I put into it, I genuinely believe you can do exactly the same thing that I did. I really believe that in today's market. Now, obviously, I'm not starting over from scratch, so I can't prove it. There's only one person on earth that's ever done more than me in the world of article marketing if we measure it by ezine articles. And the next person down has done a third of the work that I've done, or less than a third, a third and 3.5 of work, or 2/7 of the amount of work that I've done. So there's no way for us to say, okay, out of a basket of 100 people that have done the same amount of work, did 80 of them have the same level of success? Because nobody's done it. One other person has exceeded what I've done, and everybody on earth is either at a third or less. And so it's really impossible for me to ever answer the question, hey, if I do what you do, can I have your results? I don't know. However, I will say this, that if you approach any traffic source with a half-hearted attitude, you're probably better off not investing any money in the internet and instead spending your free time bowling or golfing or something like that. Okay? And I don't say that to be facetious or negative or anything. I really say that because I hope that it will strike a chord with you. Because my guess is, here you are, this is the 4th video in this training. This is deep training. There's no basics in here. I'm not teaching basics in here. If I taught the basics, you'd be at hour 12 or hour 15. I'm not teaching the basics here. This is deep material. Hopefully you believe it's incredible material so far. You've taken the time to watch and listen to 3.5 hours of what I believe is great training, and hopefully at this point you believe that to be true. Okay? Hopefully if you're at that point, you're struggling with traffic, you're struggling to make money because you don't have the pieces figured out. You've bought this training so that you can get the pieces figured out. If I come out and say, look, maybe one of the reasons that the pieces aren't working is there's a gap in the actual implementation in whatever traffic source that you're doing. Now, I don't know that. You could be doing a great job with traffic, but you're doing a really poor job of creating products. Maybe you're doing a great job with traffic and a great job with products, but you don't write emails that people respond to. Maybe you write emails that people respond to, but you don't have the traffic. Maybe you write emails, but you don't have the products. You've got to have all 3 pieces, folks. You have to master traffic if you're going to make a living online. You have to master communicating. And I talk about writing emails all the time. That's because that's how I communicate. You can communicate on Facebook if you want to. You can communicate on Twitter if you want to. You can communicate on the telephone. You can use the postal mail if you want to. You can use a telephone. You can use conference calls. You can use webinars. I happen to use emails, and so that's why I bandy that term around, emails. But what I really mean when I say that is you've got to be able to communicate with people and reach their core. That's a skill to be learned. Maybe 1 out of 1,000 people comes out of high school with that skill already learned, and that's the person that was voted most popular in their senior class. I wasn't. This is a skill that has taken me years and years to learn. How to use language to be able to connect with people, to connect my thoughts with their thoughts so that we're both able, not necessarily on the same page, but so that they understand me and I understand them, and so that I can show them the path that will allow them to move to the next step. And perhaps that's where you're weak. And if that's where you're weak, you must attack that weakness. And the third area is, if you have the traffic down, you have the communication down, but you don't have anything to sell people, if you don't have the product, if you don't have the coaching, you don't have a business. You have to have all 3 of those pieces. Folks, that's why I'm kind of pushing the buttons here. Let's look at WSOs. I'm going to talk a little bit about what works and what doesn't. I've already shown you on the spreadsheet. The WSO leads are attractive. I don't want to tell you that WSO leads don't convert. I know one person that's been running WSO leads for about 4 years, and no, I'm not going to give you his name, but I know somebody that's been running WSO leads for about 4 years. And this person is quite profitable across the board. I don't have any idea how profitable he is with those. But my guess is he wouldn't run something for 4 years if he wasn't profitable. Now, like me, he has an incredible back end, a huge back end. He builds incredible relationship. And the truth of the matter is, if I were to let these leads simmer for 3 years, could they eventually become profitable? Yes, they certainly could be. This kind of goes back to the cash flow analysis I gave you earlier. I'm a real big believer in positive cash flow as quickly as possible so that we can reinvest. We want to grow and grow and grow. We have to be able to reinvest. So I'm not a real big believer in leads, WSO leads. You'll see me run them from time to time. Hey, if I'm running a big promotion, I want to generate 200 or 300 leads in a couple of days. I just might invest $200 over there at the Warrior Forum and come up with the leads. If I'm investing something like that, I have another purpose besides profit for generating those leads. I want to do a quick survey, and it's worth $300 to get those results in 2 days instead of waiting 6 months. I may do it, but I'm probably not doing it for the profit. We've talked about solo ads, so I'm not going to talk about this a lot. There's a place for solo ads, private solo ads with individuals who have real internet marketing lists, not individuals who are selling solo ads for the sheer purpose of selling solo ads. Based on everything I've shared with you above, what's my strategy going forward? There's 3 pieces to my going forward strategy. One is to continue with article and content marketing. By the way, I don't differentiate much between article and content. I mean, content online includes things like YouTube videos, and blog posts. In my opinion, a blog post is just an article called by a different name. That's it. And I mean, really, in my opinion, a blog post is nothing but an article that's placed on a blog. And an article is an article, well, an article is a blog post that's placed on a website, if you think about it. And in my opinion, there's no inherent difference between an article and a blog post. An article tends to have some predetermined length, say between 400 and 5,000 words. Content might only have 200 words or it might have 6,000 words. There's just not a whole lot of difference for me between articles and written content. A YouTube video that's used for generating traffic is probably going to be about 5 minutes long, which is probably about 500 words of speech, which if you think about it is just a spoken article. So to me, what that means is that articles and content and YouTube videos and PDFs and everything else that we see online under the auspices of content is really just an article by a different name or a different form. And so I tend to use those terms interchangeably. So going forward, one of the things that I intend to do is beef up the article and the content marketing strategy a little bit. On WSOs, let's look at what works and what doesn't. What I've discovered, what works is that certain topics, and over the last 6 months, certainly all of those topics are not on this spreadsheet. Been kind of doing some specialized testing over the last 60 days on some very specific and unique topics, and have had interesting results. And you've got to go out and find out what topics work for you in your niche. But what I've discovered with WSOs is that running them and bumping them in such a way that on the Warrior Forum, when we bump them, they pay for themselves. And what does that mean? It means if I'm running it at $7, I pay $40 for the ad, I make 6 sales. Really, that's all I care about. All I care about is making 6 sales. I'm not interested in a profit on day one. Now, hey, don't get me wrong. If 10 people buy and I have a $30 profit on day one, sweet. Maybe I'll buy another WSO today. But the goal is to break even on the front end. Why? Well, because we've looked at the stats and we say if I just break even on the front end, in 30 days we have $17 of revenue off of break even. That's almost an unlimited amount of profit on that particular subscriber, and $51 per buyer in the long run. So we turn a $40 investment today into 7 or 6 leads that generate $300 in the long run. So we make a $40 investment today that actually returns $40 within 24 hours. So the exception of a carrying cost for 24 hours worth of cash, there's a 0 cost. And then we have a revenue that's generated from that of about $300 over the course of time. And I'm okay with that. Okay, there's one other way that people use WSOs, and that is really focusing on generating affiliates and generating 200, 300, 500, 1,000 sales. I'm going to really give you my opinion here on this. And we could look at it from a couple of different perspectives. We could say, boy, Sean's jaded because he's never had 1,000 selling WSO. But I've had a number of $200, $300, $400, 100 unit sellers. What I've discovered is, and if we look at the stats across the board, there's 100 to 200 WSOs every single week, and 1 or 2 of them may hit 1,000 sales. What we find is that those that generally hit 1,000 sales or more are created by kind of the same group of individuals, and they have incredible affiliate back ends. Lots of people that really support them in the affiliate world. You know, what I'm getting ready to say to you is going to probably sound a little weird coming from me because I talk about relationships so much. Talk about how important building a relationship is when you're article marketing and you're email marketing and you're creating your products and you're building relationships with people. And I think that the reason I embrace that so much is that for me, building that relationship is what allows me to change people's lives in the future. So by building that relationship, I get a direct result. If I build a relationship with John, John invests with me, John uses what I teach him, John has a result in his life and it changes his life. I'm able to look at John, and at the end of the day, when I go to bed, I'm able to say, you know what? Something I've done has changed John's life, and it makes my day worth living. And I'll just be honest with you, when it comes to building relationships for the purpose of getting other people to want to promote my stuff, I don't get excited about it. I don't like it. Personally, I'm not saying this is the case at all. You know, if you're doing it, you're building those relationships, there may be more meaning in that relationship for you than it is for me. But for me, I feel like the only reason I'm building that relationship is to try to get them to mail something for me so I can make some money. I just don't feel good about that inside. One of the things that I've discovered in my life is that when I just don't feel good about something I'm doing for work, I don't do really well at it. That's what I've discovered. I've been in sales for a long time, and I've found that if I like the offer and I like the product and I like the people who might buy it, I can get out there and I can knock doors and I can generally outsell, you know, just about anybody that gives me a run for my money. I can do it. But if you give me a product, it can be a great product, but I just don't like it or believe in it, I mean, it's pulling teeth for me to be able to make that happen. And that's sort of what affiliates are for me. It's very, very difficult for me personally to do it. And so I say, hey, it doesn't work well for me. It doesn't mean it won't work well for you. However, I will give you this warning, and I'm hearing this anecdotally. More and more people are telling me this, that it's getting harder and harder and harder to have huge WSO launches. And I think that psychologically, some of that comes from the fact that there's more and more launches. Some of that comes from the fact that a lot of people a year or two ago, you know, we had the recession. People were selling at high ticket prices. The recession hit, prices came down. And then we got into WSO pricing. And some of those people that were having trouble selling at lower prices, they had to keep the income coming in. So they started promoting WSOs to their list of high ticket buyers. They sold like crazy, made a lot of money, kept doing it until they burnt up their list. Now their list is burnt up. And you know, it's kind of like if you burn a building down, you know, you can't cook dinner in that building anymore. And I think that a number of people out there have done that. They've burnt their list up, over promoting underpriced types of things, and it's sort of kind of killed that market. That's just anecdotal information. Again, this is really designed to say, hey, what works for me and what doesn't work for me. What I find that works for me in terms of long-term profitability and personal happiness is bumping those WSOs. Now, does that mean I'll never run one again, that I attempt to get some affiliates on board and really create some traction? I run something that's converting at a really high percentage and I get some great feedback on it and I say, wow, this is the kind of thing might go viral. Sure, you may see me do that again. But the idea going forward is to be much more conservative with those WSOs and really focus on the ones that are going to generate me the most amount of money. A lot of what I've done in the last 6 months right here has been profitable, but it's also been kind of a testing ground. Alrighty, moving forward, we talked about having an additional traffic source. So I'd said we're going to have 3 traffic sources. And as you know, one of the things that I'm not fond of for me personally is using social media for the purpose of driving leads. Now, in my opinion, it can be a decent source for driving leads and driving traffic, but it's very difficult to generate profitable traffic when you're also kind of schmoozing and sharing all your personal details with someone or some people at the same place that you're attempting to kind of build the business. Those two pieces just don't go hand in hand. And so one of the things that I intend to begin to integrate is a little bit more with social media with this caveat. I don't intend for it to become personal. meaning that all of that personal communication will continue to be on the emails. But if you can think of somewhere that is a social media site, it will just simply have content on it with a resource box just like an article. Now, I talked earlier about how the concept of articles to me are no different than blog posts. And what this will look like is with social media, that all it is a third party person, okay, or perhaps me from time to time, taking what would be an article on a website, a blog on a blog post, or a written content on a social media site, posting it up there with a resource box, and allowing it to be a silent, passive source of generating new leads. Once that lead occurs, there's no communication through the social media. Once that lead occurs, it goes into the proven funnel that generates, for many traffic sources, $24 a subscriber, $50 a subscriber, $51 a subscriber, $120 a subscriber, $27 a subscriber. Now, how will I evaluate success? I'll evaluate it exactly like I'm doing right here. Invest $500 in the next 3 months on 60 articles, generate X number of subscribers, look at a cost per subscriber, and estimate the dollars per subscriber that are generated in the first 21 to 30 days, multiply that out 3 times, and then ask the question, is this profitable? If it's profitable, great, we'll continue to move on with it. If it's not profitable, we'll do the same thing that I'm doing with commercial solo ads and WSO leads. I'm ruthless when it comes to eliminating traffic sources, when it comes to eliminating expense sources that don't fit in. I'm ruthless about it. How can I be ruthless? Because I look at a spreadsheet that has results like this, and the numbers jump right out. And so I'm going to recommend to you that you do the same thing. Start a spreadsheet, no matter how small you are right now. Start a spreadsheet so that you're able to see in black and white. What works and what doesn't. You can't rely on your memory, on anecdotal information, on I feel like we had a good week because. The only way that you'll know if you had a good week profit-wise is when you run a spreadsheet like what I've just shared with you, and you kind of keep track of all of those things. What was our formula in the blueprint video? It was easy. It was traffic, email, and products. We kind of already talked about that, this idea that if you're missing on any one of those 3 points, well, kind of like a 3-legged stool. If you take one of those legs out, that stool's going to fall over. If you don't have traffic, or you don't have email communication, or you don't have products, it doesn't make any difference how well you do everything else. It doesn't make any difference how smart you are, how expert you are. Well, you'll fail. The question is, how can you implement that formula in your business? Obviously in these 2 videos, I've shown you how I do it with the spreadsheets. The spreadsheets are critical. This allows me to say, are these traffic sources working? Which products are selling? One of the things we didn't really talk about here, but I'll show you, I have a column here for which products are selling. And these are just my code words for these products. I think it goes outside the scope of this to tell you what each one of these products are. I think I don't know that that's relevant. We're not sorting it by that. But what this allows me to do is to go through and say, okay, I sold 10 email toolboxes. I sold 20 templates. I sold 10 resale rights. I sold 20 access packages. I sold 10 consulting packages. Which one sells better and makes me more money? I'm able to look at that particular number, and I think that that's important for you to do. And notice it's all right here on this spreadsheet, and it's easy for me to study. Once you put these things into place, the next step is to continue testing. I mentioned at the beginning of part A that when I started this business, I started out with 20 different traffic sources, and I honed that down to 1. Then I took that 1 traffic source and I sliced and diced it into a whole bunch of different article topics, and I found the 2 or 3 that performed best for me, and I ran with those for 3, 4, 5 years. Now, you're seeing me do exactly the same thing with solo ads. And by the way, when commercial solo ads first came out, they were quite profitable for me. Quite profitable. Same exact process, though, of kind of testing and seeing who was going to be able to provide for me and who wouldn't. The last few months, you've seen me do a lot of WSO testing. I've discovered the sweet spot in the business. Now, will it be the same sweet spot a year from now? Maybe not. And that's why you've kind of got to do your own testing, determine what works today for you. And then we're going to have this concept of constant future improvement. And if you take a look at what I'm doing right here, 7 years from the beginning, I'm still doing this process of constant improvement. And you see, the idea here is that even with this level of constant improvement right here, if I now take the 50% of these traffic sources that are performing above average and double up my investment on these traffic sources, what's likely to happen to my income and my revenue? Well, it's probably going to go up. Why would that occur? We look at it in the natural. We look at it right here. We look at it from this spreadsheet where we're eliminating the losing campaigns. Now, what's going to happen is 6 months from now, I'm going to take the new spreadsheet and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, okay, out of these particular sources, I have some that are much more profitable either than others. I may say, you know what, I'm going to begin to shift more of my investment into those particular traffic sources that are performing even better. We call that constant future improvement. We're constantly growing and morphing. The business, the internet is morphing. The business model out there is morphing. The business environment is morphing. And if you don't morph along with it, then you're probably not going to stay above water. Your profit margins are probably going to begin to drop. And obviously, we don't want that to happen. Well, let's go ahead and conclude part B now of this traffic training. This has, again, been really just a look into what I do. What's my strategy behind the scenes? I certainly don't want this to be something where you say, okay, well, these are the 3 traffic sources Sean is using. Those are the ones I should be using. As you know, if you studied my core traffic training in the past, so this is kind of the advanced, the deep, the behind the scenes. But if you studied my core traffic training, you should know that what I really believe is that you should go out and find the top 10 or 15 places where people are congregating in your niche and say, hey, how can I get involved with those individuals? How can I meet them and show them that I'm a better solution than my competitor? That's really what it should be about. And for me, these traffic sources are what's working for me and what I'm planning to do kind of going forward as I morph with the times. And I believe that you should be doing the same thing. So I recommend the next step for you is to sit down and make a list of possible traffic sources. Say, which ones am I going to test and try? How am I going to mimic the testing and tracking that Sean's doing? And 90 days to 6 months from now, you're going to be able to look back and say, okay, I tried 4 traffic sources. 2 of them were a disaster. 2 of them are making me money. What can I do next? Am I going to dig deeper into these traffic sources? Am I going to come up with 2 more to replace the losers? What am I going to do? Hopefully, in the last, whatever this has been, hour and a half, over the course of these 2 parts that I've been training, you get a feel for what I do behind the scenes, how I think behind the scenes about growing traffic and growing revenue. And, you know, by the way, people ask me from time to time, you know, what are your secrets? What are your secrets? And obviously, in other places, I've shared with you a lot of things that are important. Okay, obviously, my drive and my desire is important. My faith is important. You know, I couldn't do this without the blessing of God in my life. And for those of you who know me for a long time, you know that. Okay, I couldn't do this if I hadn't developed the ability to communicate effectively. And I couldn't do this if I couldn't create products, much as I'm creating this one right here. But I think a real big key to this whole thing, for me personally, is being able to study the numbers like this and proactively go in and say, here's where we're making money. We're going to increase the money that's being invested in these areas. Here's where we're losing money, and these are the areas where we're going to cut back, and we're no longer going to invest in those particular areas. This is a critical step, and I believe that even if you get good at driving traffic, you get good at communicating, you get good at selling products, but you don't get, not necessarily good, but okay, if you don't get to the point that you can create a spreadsheet like this and evaluate dollars per subscriber per source, I believe that's going to hold you back from getting the growth and the business success that you want. I believe that this particular element of growing your business is huge. It's important. It's one that's not talked about a whole lot, and that's the reason why I've put so much effort and time into these 2 particular videos, frankly, more than I had anticipated investing, so that you can really see almost inside my mind how I think about slicing and dicing traffic. So with that, let's go ahead and We'll end part B.